Good morning everyone. Welcome to our Friday yin class. I'm Morgan, and today we're going to need a lot of our props. So if you're working at home and you don't have everything, don't worry about it. Just grab things that make sense to you. We're definitely going to need bolsters or pillows or whatever you have, so grab them. We're going to start in a reclined supported butterfly, and what that's going to look like is we're going to have a pillow, a blanket, a block, whatever you have for your head, for neck support or whatever you would like. We're going to bring a blanket, a rolled towel, or possibly even a little bolster depending on how much give it has. If it doesn't have much give, I don't recommend it, but if it does, we can bring that underneath the curvature of our lumbar spine. And then this other bolster or blocks, if you would prefer, are going to come underneath the knees for our supported butterfly portion of this posture. So take a moment, head into that shape, make it nice and comfortable here. Taking our time, there's no rush to get into this shape, so we want to just make sure that we are comfortable and that things feel like they're in the right place. There's no rush to begin our practice today, because we want to see if we can begin to find stillness. And if things don't feel quite right, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to find that stillness. So once you've found a good space to rest in, we'll take a nice big inhale in through the nose, gathering the week that we've had, gathering the morning that we've had, and then as you're ready, we'll take a long audible exhale, maybe even an audible sigh out, letting go of the week that we've had, letting go of our to-do list, of any worries, of any drama, of any world things that have been weighing on us, just setting it aside for right now. I promise you those things will be here for you after practice. But right now, this time is about you. This time is about settling into your body, into your breath, and into your being. And as we begin to ground into our practice here, we'll all take a moment to just reflect on this season, this element of water. So we're in winter, we're in it, we're here. And we're experiencing the darker days, the darker mornings, the full coldness of winter, although it seems a little bit more mild up here this year. But we're here, we're in this. And I don't know about you guys, but I find myself, especially in the middle of winter, beginning to dream of spring, of summer, of warmth. And I find myself resisting a lot of this slowing down thing that we talk about, this rest, this hibernation. And so I encourage you today to ask yourself, are we resisting any part of this season? Are we forcing ourselves to maybe do more in our days rather than taking time to rest? Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe it's really hard for you to do anything, and that's okay too. But just seeing it, acknowledging, where are we at right now? Are there parts of us that are resistant to maybe slowing down, to the darkness, to the shadow part of this year? And as we begin to answer these questions, as we begin to really be honest with where we are, now take a moment to reflect on this idea of water. Now, water, when confronted with an obstacle, we'll always try and find a way to adapt, to flow, to move around it, move through it, move between it, doesn't matter, it'll figure it out. And so today, even if we have some resistance to life right now, even if we're finding it very hard to slow down or even harder to do something. Can we begin to embody this idea of water, this idea of flowing with what life gives us, of adapting, of being adaptable, of being flexible? And so as we practice today, if things start to come up where you feel yourself resisting a posture or resisting a feeling, an emotion that you're having, or just anything in your life or in others' lives or in the world, take a moment to just ask, is this something that I can adapt to? Is this something that I can be a little less resistant to and allow a little bit more flow in my life with? We'll take a few more rounds of breath here, maybe beginning to just check in with our body if we haven't already. Noticing parts of us that might feel a little stiff or rigid. Maybe we're feeling the coldness of our winter and it's starting to maybe make our muscles a little tighter, our joints a little stiffer. So just noticing what parts of you are speaking loudly today. What parts of you need your attention, need your compassion? And taking a few more moments to check in with our body, just allowing our awareness to travel from limb to limb, muscle to muscle, bone to bone. We might begin to notice even the flow of our breath. With every exhale, allowing our body to relax into our props and into our mat. With every inhale, beginning to gather in this peace, this stillness. And again, with every exhale, beginning to soften and relax into that peace and stillness. And maybe we begin to notice our thoughts, our mind, noticing any parts that might be resistant to slowing down, to stillness, to quiet. And seeing if we can find just a moment to be okay with that. It is okay that we're resistant. It's okay that sometimes, we fight the flow a little bit. We all have those moments. But acknowledging those moments and then choosing our next step is probably one of the most important parts. So maybe we are resistant to our life or to parts of it right now. Maybe we're resistant to this year. Maybe we're resistant to this new normal that has become more normal than not, that we've settled into. Whatever it is that we're finding resistance with, taking a moment to tell yourself, it is okay that I am resistant to this. And how do I begin to move beyond that? How do I begin to find my flow again? Taking a few more rounds of our longest breaths here. Maybe setting your intention to find flow in your life. to move like water, even in the most resistant or the most hard things to get through, right? Because water can carve through anything. Look at the Grand Canyon, for instance. It all requires just a little bit of patience. So maybe that thing that we're resisting seems very big in our life or in our body or in our feelings. But know that you are strong enough, resilient enough, adaptable enough to move through it, just like water. Final round of breath here. And when you're ready, we'll begin to reach our hands down next to our legs on the outer edges of our thighs. We'll begin to close the legs together. Pausing here with the feet and the knees together, we'll take one round of breath like this. And then we'll begin to heel toe the feet out to the edges of our mat. Knees are going to stay knocked in together. And we'll take a few rounds of breath here, allowing the body to settle into this internal rotation of the hips. One more breath. And we'll begin to heel toe the feet back to be hip distance apart. Knees separate to be hip distance apart. Now, some of us are going to keep the props underneath our head and underneath our spine. Others of us might choose to remove one or the other. We're going to be heading into our supine twists. So I'm going to bring a bolster between my shins, between my knees and my ankles. Some of us might choose to do this, others of us might not want that. So decide if that's something that you're going to want. Maybe you even bring it off of the left hip. And then when you're ready, we're going to T or cactus the arms open. If this is too much for today and we want to keep the arms closer to the body for any reason, you're also welcome to rest them on the belly. So once we've decided where our arms are going to be, we'll take a deep breath in, and as we exhale, we'll begin to let the legs fall over towards our left. We might begin to turn our gaze over that right shoulder. Maybe even looking to the furthest right corner of our eyes. Beginning to notice if there's any places along your spine that feel resistant to our twists. And as we notice those places, maybe envisioning that our breath is like water. And that as we inhale and we direct our breath into that place along our spine that is tense, that it begins to wrap around that vertebrae and soften. That it begins to carve out the tension of that space. So as we inhale, we envision our breath moving like water down our spine. And as we exhale, we soften into our twists. Maybe we're finding that it's hard to sit in stillness and in quiet this morning. And so maybe we begin to think of a mantra or an affirmation that we can begin to repeat to ourselves. No, this may not be quiet or stillness, but yes, it is a way to begin to train the mind to soften and to calm. And so maybe today our affirmation or mantra is, today I choose to flow with my life. Or maybe there's something that is a little bit more personal and true to you. There's no right way when it comes to practicing yoga. There's no right way when it comes to getting to know yourself. Only you know how to do that. And so maybe it is as simple as just laying here in our twist and breathing. Or maybe it does get a little more complicated and we need those affirmations or those focal points to calm our mind. Both ways are good, and neither way is wrong. We'll be here for a few more rounds of breath. Final round of breath. And when you're ready, we'll begin to inhale, move the neck and the head gently back to center. Pausing here, we'll begin to draw the arms back in. And then when you're ready, we'll inhale and begin to move the legs back to center. Taking a moment here, maybe rocking from hip to hip, from side to side. Or possibly just pausing in stillness and hugging the legs up. For those of us that use a bolster underneath our knees, we're going to go ahead and move that off of the right hip. For those of us that want to keep the bolster between our legs, we'll go ahead and bring that there. We'll bring our arms into a shape that feels good to us. So that could be a T, a low V, it can be on your belly or in cactus. And then when you're ready on an exhale, we'll begin to let the legs gently fall over towards our right. And we might begin to turn our gaze over our left shoulder. As we settle into this side, maybe noticing if it feels at all different. Maybe you feel like there's more or less space. Maybe you feel more or less resistant to holding this shape. And just acknowledging where the body is, developing that mind-body awareness, that connection. And then after we've noticed how it feels, we might begin to direct our breath to the places that we found feel tight or resistant. Something I've noticed in my own self and in my own life and the lives of others is that often resistance is not just a physical or a mental, emotional thing. Oftentimes they're linked. And what I mean by that is when we find ourselves being resistant to something, someone, some idea, feeling in our life, that it begins to manifest in our physical body as tension, as resistance. And so maybe you notice that lately your body has been fighting a certain posture or shape. I encourage you to begin to explore that. Now, in some cases, it literally is telling you, this is not good for my body, and we don't do this today. And to that I say, good, listen to your body. But in other cases, sometimes it has nothing to do with anything physical. And maybe our mind begins to jump to some experience we had. Explore that. Let your mind go there for a moment. What are you finding? As you begin to explore that resistance, do you notice that it begins to fade away? So just some things to think about. We're about halfway through. So adjusting any props we need here, or maybe just tuning back in with our breath, back into the body. Couple more rounds of breath here. On our final round of breath, we might choose a mantra to say here. For me, as I exhale, I'm going to say, I choose to let go of any resistance in my body. And we'll take our final inhale in here. And as you exhale, maybe repeating a mantra to yourself. When you're ready, we'll begin by inhaling the head and neck back to center. We'll bring our arms in towards the body. And then we'll begin to inhale, move the legs back to center. If we had something between the legs, we're going to go ahead and move that off to the side. We'll pause here, our feet on the ground, our knees up towards the sky, and we'll just take a moment to let our backs come flat against our mat. Feeling the stability of our homes beneath us. Taking a moment here to realize how supported you are in your life, in your practice, in your body. And then in your own time, when you're ready, we'll make our way onto our favorite side. Pausing here for a moment, taking a round of breath, maybe even coming into a fetal shape. And reminding yourself again that you are supported on this journey of life. And that when we meet those moments where we find resistance, that's okay. Like water, we will make it through. We will find a way. We will adapt. On your next inhale, we'll begin to press ourselves up into our seat, bringing ourselves into our space. I know for me, whenever I transition from a laying down to a seat, I always take some moment for me to get my bearings. So finding your nice comfortable space here, your nice comfortable seat, getting your props out of the way. We'll take a moment to just soften the eyes or close our eyes. And we'll begin to notice our sits bones here. We'll take a round of breath, maybe inhaling as we reach the hands up towards the sky, full body stretch here, all through the sides. And as you're ready, exhale, the hands come down to the heart. Taking a round of breath here before we head into our next shape. Our next shape is going to be our child's pose. So for me, I'm going to bring something underneath my knees for a little bit of support and cushion. For a lot of us that are practicing on hardwood, I'm going to recommend that we do bring something underneath our knees. For those of us that have really tight ankles, because that definitely is a thing, we might bring a little bolster or a rolled up blanket or towel underneath the ankles for a little bit of support. And then we might just make this extra comfy by also bringing a blanket or pillow between the hamstrings and the calves. This is really good for a couple reasons. One being that it helps blood flow through and down to the feet, and also it helps take some of the pressure and bend on the knee. So maybe we bring this in, maybe we don't, but we're all going to begin to widen the knees, extend the arms open towards the top of our mat, and then begin to bow the head down towards the earth. If the head doesn't touch, we're welcome to bring a pillow or a block down so that we can rest the forehead on that. And we'll begin to breathe here. Whether your forehead is on a block or on the ground, we might take a moment to roll this space out, massaging that third eye center. And that might sound a little silly, right, to massage a chakra, but thinking about this for a moment, a lot of us when we're curious or when we're frustrated or when we're thinking really hard about something, that space right there, that third eye center, that space between the eyebrows tends to bunch up. We tend to really squint and really bundle that space. So taking time to really massage it out, relaxing those muscles, and maybe even physically clearing some space in the mind to breathe, to think things clearly, to see clearly. So really taking a moment to massage this space out. We're also massaging a little bit of our bladder meridian here, which is one of our meridians of winter. It's actually at the very start of it. So maybe a couple more movements from side to side with the head here, and eventually finding that space of stillness. And beginning to focus our breath down the spine. And again, as we breathe, imagining that like water, our breath can flow between and around each rib, each vertebrae, creating space and ease along the way, polishing the tension, the stones in our spine, right? Those knots that we have, softening them away. Seeing if we can even breathe so deeply that we begin to maybe even feel it in our knees, our hips, possibly even the toes. We're about halfway. You're welcome to stay here in our child's pose, or we might begin to head into our tadpole. To come into tadpole, we're going to lift the hips off of the heels for a moment, spread the big toes to be about 6 inches apart, let the knees widen even more, and then begin to sink the hips back between the heels, between the big toes now. If this posture is starting to become uncomfortable or painful in the body, we might take a moment to come fully out, stretching the knees, bringing some blood back into the feet. Maybe even coming into a upward dog or cobra to stretch out the hip flexors a little bit. So remember, we don't always have to stay in one shape. You are always welcome to move in the direction your body is pulling you in. Few more rounds of breath here. Final couple rounds of breath. I choose to let go of my resistance, and instead I choose to flow with the experience of life. I choose patience. I choose to be adaptable. I choose to trust in my own flexibility, in my own strength and power. Final round of breath here. And when you're ready, we'll inhale, peek the head up towards the hands. The hands will begin to press down into our mat. We'll press into the hands as we lift the hips up. Bring the knees underneath the hips. We'll begin to drop the hips down towards the mat, coming into a upward facing dog variation. Kind of more of a relaxed upward facing dog, but we're really just stretching through the front of the hips and pelvis here. So maybe rocking from side to side, looking over one shoulder and then the other. Maybe taking a cat-cow or some movements, organic movements in the body. And then when you're ready, we'll come onto our seat. We're going to bring that blanket that we have underneath our bottoms. We're going to grab our blocks if we have them. If we don't have them, that's okay. We're just going to grab a pillow or a bolster. We're going to take our blocks and we're going to bring ourselves into a heart opener. So one of our blocks is going to come onto a middle setting or a high setting. For the head, I'm going to choose middle, but for those of you that really like that heart opener or that always feel like your head is kind of hanging out behind you when you're in a heart opener, you're going to bring it onto the higher setting. So for those of us that are on the middle setting, we're going to bring that next block vertically down the mat on the lower setting. If you have the block on the high setting, we might leave it on the low setting if we had that neck drop back feeling, or if we didn't, we're going to bring that next block onto the middle setting. So a lot of different options for you to explore here, but once we have the block set up, we're going to bring our bolster on it. This other bolster or pillow, if you have one, can come underneath the knees. We're going to bring our bottoms or that sacrum right up against that other bolster, that little bolster that's on the blocks. And then we're going to begin to lie ourselves back into our heart opener. If you have extra props and you want to get super comfortable here, one thing that we could do is bring a pillow or a blanket or something on our bellies to add a little bit of weight here. Adding this weight is actually can be really a big comfort. It can help us slow down. It can bring us out of that sympathetic nervous system, out of that stress state, and bring us into a parasympathetic state, a state of rest. This is also helpful for digesting our food. We'll begin to settle in here, maybe taking a moment to find each shoulder blade and move it a little bit more underneath the heart space so that the front of our chest is open. myself and to others. I am learning to flow with life. We're about halfway. We might choose to change the shape of our legs. We might choose to add or take away props here. Or we simply might just check back in with our breath and the body. See, a part of becoming less resistant, especially within the body, is understanding what we hear and feel within our body. If we don't understand what we're finding, then we don't know whether or not we're resisting or we're letting things happen or we're continuing a habit. So the more we develop that body connection, the more we learn the language of ourself, the more we're able to understand and help support ourselves along this journey. The less resistance we'll have because we'll understand what it is that we truly want or need. So if you don't typically take time to be with yourself, to ask yourself these questions, to explore your resistance, your desires, your shadow, your light, then it might be a little difficult to flow with your life, right? So taking time here, maybe it's as simple as, what is resistant in my body? Or maybe it's way more complex and personal. Few more rounds of breath here. Final round of breath. And when you're ready, we'll begin by bending the knees, planting the feet. We'll move any props that we had off on our bellies off to the side. We'll take a moment here with the feet planted, the knees pointed towards the sky, just to take a round of breath and notice and feel. And in your own time, bringing your hands to either side of the hips, we'll begin to press ourselves up as we inhale. Coming into our seat, we'll pause here. Maybe beginning to move the spine in circles or a little bit of an organic movement here, just noticing how it feels. Any parts of our spine that might feel still a little stuck. Making a mental note of that. And then when you're ready, we'll begin to send our legs out long in front of us. Some of us might choose to bring something underneath our knees for a little bit of support. If we have tighter hamstrings, that's one reason to do it. Another reason is if we know that we have hypermobile joints. This helps us find different spaces that maybe we typically don't access. So bringing ourselves into our caterpillar shape, we might like to hug something as we fold forward. We might want a block to rest the forehead on. So choose if those are something that you're going to want. And then when you're ready, we'll take a deep breath, find a tall spine. And as you're ready to exhale, we'll begin to round ourselves forward. Finding that first edge. So we're meeting that first place of sensation, and we're not resisting that. We're not forcing beyond that. We're allowing. We're allowing what is to be. When we practice doing that in our bodies, in our practice, it makes it easier when we go out into the world. We find that we have less harsh judgments or criticism and more compassion and kindness because we have practiced doing it with ourselves. So finding that first edge and honoring that space, being kind to that place. It is okay that maybe today we don't touch the toes. It's okay if the legs aren't straight. It's okay if we feel a lot of sensation that is making us not want to be in the shape. Choose to be kind to yourself. Choose compassion and understanding. And as you choose that, as you recognize that where you are is a good place to be, you'll find that there might even become less resistance, not only in the mind, but also in our bodies. Bowing the head to that place, to that edge, softening the spine, the shoulders, letting go of any tension behind the knee, the calf, the ankles, even our toes. And begin to allow our breath to move the body in deeper here. As we inhale, we notice like a wave, like water, our spine begins to lift. And as we exhale, we allow the spine to lower back down. meet resistance with kindness and compassion. I meet resistance with kindness and compassion. I let go of frustration, of judgment, of expectation. And I learn to allow what is to be, knowing that like water, I will adapt. I will continue to move, to flow ever forward. Couple more rounds of breath here. Last round of breath. And before we begin to make our way up, we'll go ahead and just pause where we are, however folded we are, and then we'll begin to just gently rock or shift our weight from right to left. So we're just letting our spine sway over towards each side, hovering for a moment, and then moving off to the other side. Eventually, we might start to lift the spine as we sway from each side, gently rocking ourselves until finally we make our way all the way up into our Dandasana seat, our staff pose. Pausing here, maybe resting the hands atop the thighs, taking a round of breath. When you're ready, we'll move any props that we had on top of the legs off to the side. If we had one underneath the knees, we might keep it there as we bend the knees, bring the soles of the feet together. We'll slide the bolster, if they were under our knees, up a little bit, so now they're supporting the upper outer thigh. So we're moving from our caterpillar into our butterfly here. And we're gonna start by bringing our hands down to our feet. I mentioned earlier that the bladder meridian starts up by the forehead. It actually starts in the inner eye. But our kidney meridian is going to begin underneath our foot here. So right, if you find your big toe, you find your second toe and your third toe, you go in between those two and then you slide down to right underneath the balls of your second and third toe. That is kidney 1. And it's a very grounding point along that meridian. So maybe bringing your thumbs into that space and just pressing in there. If anything, it's just a really wonderful massage, but also it could be really nice to warm the feet to bring some of that energy downward, to ground it. We might find ourselves having this urge to move up the leg a little bit as we compress the palms into that inner leg. This is continuing along that kidney meridian. Maybe you find a spot that feels extra good, and we linger there. We'll take a couple more moments with this. And then we'll bring our hands up to our knees, full palm against the leg, and we're going to slide the palms down to the tips of our toes. We're going to do this a few times, just stimulating some of that heat, that energy down into our feet. We'll maybe do this one more time here, maybe even coming up to the upper thigh and bringing it all the way down. And then when you're ready, the hands will pause down at the feet. Maybe the thumbs rest on that kidney 1. We'll inhale, lift through the crown of the head, and as we exhale, we'll begin to bow the head down towards our toes. We'll be here for a few rounds of breath. To me, this posture is a really wonderful one to do for both the kidney and the bladder meridian, so for both of our winter meridian lines. Because as we're here, we're essentially bringing the very start of our bladder meridian down to the very beginning of our kidney meridian. So we're pulling the eyes or the forehead towards the feet. We're opening through the inner side of the leg, the kidney meridian, and we're opening through the back of the body, the bladder meridian. So thinking about, for the next few rounds of breath, full body breathing here. Maybe even breathing so deeply that you begin to lift away from yourself, and as you exhale, you begin to collapse back in. One more breath. And when you're ready, we'll inhale, begin to roll ourselves back up, bringing ourselves into a nice tall spine, pausing at the very top, taking a moment here to feel. And then we'll begin to come into our comfortable seat. So maybe this is where you are and that's comfortable for you, or maybe you begin to come into an easy seat or lotus. We can bring something underneath our bum if that feels nice. We can wrap ourselves in a blanket. We're going to be heading into our not our final resting posture Shavasana, but our final shape of the class, which is going to be a meditation. So making sure that we feel supported here enough to find stillness. Kind of like I said in the beginning of class, We want to take time to offer ourselves that support so that we can truly go into that stillness. So wrapping ourselves in our blanket if we would like. And then to begin, we're going to bring our hands to the tops of our thighs. Palms are going to face up. I'll give everyone a couple of moments to kind of get settled in with their blankies and whatnot. And then when you're ready, palms are going to come face up to the tops of the thighs. As you inhale, we're going to gently begin to tense the body. So just bring a little bit of tense to the body. And then as we double exhale out through the mouth, we soften the tension in our body. So we'll do this 3 more times. Inhale in as we tense softly. Audible double exhale as we soften. Two more. Inhale in. Tense the body. Double audible exhale as we soften. Last one. And when you're ready, double exhale. Allowing the body to relax fully here. Allowing the mind to find stillness and ease. Beginning to draw our awareness into our heart. We might feel the beat, the rhythm of our life pulsing in the body. We might hear the sound of our heart. And just tuning into that space. And as we do, we might begin to imagine this feeling of peace overflowing from our heart with every beat. Every breath, we feel the peace moving through our body, reaching the very corners, wrapping around every limb, every joint, every cell and atom within us. And as we allow this feeling of peace to wash over us, we begin to allow it to spill into the room that we are in, flowing around every object, expanding to every corner in our room, outside of our room, through our home. Allowing this feeling of peace to move through your entire house until eventually you are completely enveloped in this feeling of peace. Like a cocoon of love, of hope, of joy. very core, we are peace. Peace in our mind, peace in our body, peace in our life. Peace, peace, peace. An option to stay here for our final resting posture, or when you're ready, finding your way into a more suitable shape for you. As we settle in once again to our stillness, our loving awareness, Shavasana. Water does not resist. Water flows. When you plunge your hand into it, all you feel is its caress. Water is not a solid wall. It will not stop you. But water always goes where it wants to go, and nothing in the end can stand against it. Water is patient. Dripping water wears away a stone. Remember that, my child. Remember that you are half water. If you can't go through an obstacle, go around it. Water always does. Bringing awareness back to this moment with a deep breath in through the nose. And an audible exhale out. Enlivening our limbs where it feels good to do so. Taking our time. An option to close class where you are, or in your own time if you're not already there, beginning to find your way into our comfortable seat. Taking our time. moving gently here. And when you're ready, bringing our hands to heart center, taking a moment to just sit with our own being, feeling the pulse of our life beneath our hands, bowing our heads in gratitude for this life, for this practice, for our bodies, for ourselves, and to each other. Thank you for sharing your light and your love with me today. Om Shanti. Om Peace. Namaste.